Our gerbil is?
Well, Auburn's got War Eagle.
Yeah.
Hail State's got the Cowbells. We got
Bama's got Roll Tide. Missouri's got War Gerbil.
Right. And I think people know that. It's going to catch on.
So you can get those at tmastlshop.com, just like my black and gold St. Louis shirt. So there that is.
Oh, boy, that thing that's a stunner right there.
Yeah, no, it's mainly because of my chest and my erect nipples. 314-399-9646, Air Comfort Service text line. Leave a mic drop if you would like. You know what? I have a feeling I'm just going to go off on tangents, and then I'm going to say, oh, Jackson, it's time for a Lil Piddles Angry Beaver Weekend Wrap-Up. You know what? I'm gonna flip the script and say, why don't you weekend wrap up me with Angry Beaver? And then if I go on a tangent, I go on a tangent. This show is essentially a tangent, whether it be from the audience or from one of the hosts.
Sure. I think I got some tangent-worthy questions, possibly, on this Lil Piddles Weekend Wrap-Up brought to you by Angry Beaver. Mention Piddles for $5 off any pizza. Missouri was able to take command of the Dome and get a victory over Memphis and remain undefeated. 23th-ranked team in the country.
Go Tigers. Beat Commodores. Go Tigers. Beat Commodores. Go fight. Win. Tigers.
Do you think so far we have seen a lot of progress over the past few years to now give you more confidence that Coach Eli Drinkwitz can be the coach that guides the Tigers to the next level?
I don't know necessarily on Drink. I just feel like the program. But here's the thing. Let me take a step back. So, all right, it's over now. Here's the first segment. It's already over.
Anytime you say, let's take a step back.
You know it's on. You know you can just shut it down and start watching Dennis Gate highlights.
Whiteboard Wednesday is coming up in 2 days.
Yeah, that's right. The Missouri fan relationship with Eli Drinkwitz is one, if you could chart on a graph, approval ratings.
Yeah.
And I have always kind of been on the opposite side of where the hardcore Missouri fan is on it. They loved him right when he was hired.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going, okay, but if he was so great, why was he not the initial recommendation? And why did, he not have a bunch of schools coming after him? I'm not saying that because I'm not high on him. But then that became, oh, you're a hater. And I go, but that's just it's a question.
It's just a question, Tim.
And then they beat LSU. And I'm going, but LSU's garbage this year, kind of like TCU's kind of garbage this year. I realized they were national champions the year before. TCU was in the national championship game the year before. But I'm like, this isn't Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
No.
Well, you're a hater. I'm going, but these are facts. And then last year, I'm going, okay, they were in it against Georgia. The Auburn thing is as close as I can recall to a game that should have been one that wasn't, going back to 1985 and the Cardinals and Royals.
Yeah.
In two different spots, Mevis missing a 20-yarder and Pete dropping the ball out of bounds. And in addition to that, they were right there, like I said, against Georgia, and you had the bizarro punt thing against Kentucky.
Yeah.
Now, I realize they could have lost to Vanderbilt, could have lost to Arkansas, but the point being they were making progress. But what were the Missouri fans saying at that time? I don't think Drinkwitz is the guy, and I'm going, but the program's making progress. So that's how you have to look at it on college football. It's making progress. And then, as it turns out, Brady Cook was playing with a torn effing shoulder labrum in his throwing arm.
Yeah.
And you'd have to think Luther Burden would be better than his freshman year. By the way, I never thought it would be this good.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think it's making progress. And then, but now I'm up here. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm up here, okay? This is the graph. I'm up here, and the Missouri fans are down on him now. And then you have the Middle Tennessee game. Understandably, that's when we're in lockstep going, ooh, this is a little weird.
Yeah.
What in the hell is going on here? This is a problem. But then all the money was on Missouri against Kansas State. And then they beat Kansas State. But even if they would have lost that game, I would have been in a weird spot going, clearly they have improved. Then the money was on Memphis, and I'm going, oh, boy, now we got a problem.
Right.
And while it depends on what the spread was that you got, because it kicked off, I don't know what it kicked off at. Actually, I didn't bet it. Do you know what it kicked off at?
6.5.
Did it kick off at 6.5? So if you bet Missouri, you covered. But I think it started at 7.5, and then it went down to 5.5, and then it went back up to 6.5. Point being, it depends on what time you bet it. If you did bet it one way or the other, who you got, and what you bet. Then I'm going, oh, this scares me. But I loved what he did right out of the gate with the onside kick. I loved that.
Agreed.
The result would say it didn't work because there was an offsides penalty against Missouri, but I love that aggression. You have to be aggressive. So here is where, after all of that long-windedness, I come in. The team is better. The team has improved, and that's what a program is about, which is why I get frustrated, and this goes on in college sports, not limited to Missouri or Illinois or St. Louis University. People go, you got to fire the guy. You can have a bad break take place and then go, well, that's not necessarily because of the coach. Now, the delay of the game situation against K-State, that's coaching.
Yeah.
Marcus Freeman having 10 players on the field at the end against Ohio State. That's coaching.
Yeah.
Twice. That's coaching. That's coaching. But Missouri is in, from my standpoint, the ideal spot if you are any coach. But in this case, you asked about Eli Drinkwitz. You're 4-0, and yet you clearly have a lot of things you need to improve if you're going to build on this to have a great season. And by Missouri standards, a great season is a lot different than what the expectations were in Athens, Tuscaloosa, Baton Rouge, Clemson, right. I suppose this year, Tallahassee, Columbus, Ann Arbor, maybe the Coliseum with USC, depending on wherever you are, probably Jimbo Fisher in College Station. The expectations and what makes a great season is different. So now what you have at the end of September for the first time in a decade is an undefeated team with hope. And I think when you take a step back on college football, all you want to have is hope when you wake up on Sunday morning, even if it's delusional. Because when it's all said and done, only one team gets to be the national champion. But you want to have the belief that you got a shot to have a great year. And again, a great year for Missouri is different than a great year for other places. And now Missouri, I would say 85% of the time they win at Vanderbilt. Do I expect them to win at Vanderbilt? Yes, but of course things can happen.
Sure.
So 85% chance that you do now get that undefeated team hosting LSU. And we'll find out, at least we're supposed to find out at noon today what time that game will be. I personally think if I had to bet it, my bet is that the networks will exercise the 6-day option and wait to see what happens with Missouri, Vanderbilt, LSU at Ole Miss, Alabama at Mississippi State, Kentucky hosting Florida. What else have I left out? A&M is playing Arkansas and Fayetteville to see what happens this weekend, and then determine Georgia's at Auburn, and then determine what they want to do with the schedule. That's what I would do, because what may look like the obvious game could change if a team loses. Yep. So with that said, I think it's better for the program for Missouri to have a night game or a 2:30 game, because then that leads to more people wanting to go down there and tailgate as opposed to an 11 o'clock game. And if you can get the 2:30 game or a night game, it leads to more eyeballs. And maybe, not saying it's likely at all, but maybe get college game day there. If LSU wins in Oxford and Missouri's undefeated, maybe. I still would say at this moment it's going to be Texas, Oklahoma, and Dallas at the Cotton Bowl for the final Big 12 matchup of the Red River Shootout. With that all said, Eli Drinkwitz and his hire of Kirby Moore, Luther Burden, and Brady Cook playing way above I could have ever seen him play, have people who normally don't talk Missouri football talking Missouri football, in part because the Blues haven't started up yet, unless you're into preseason hockey, and what a twin bill it was this weekend against the Coyotes. The Cardinals are irrelevant, and you now have attention, just like we've talked about for City. Those two sets of circumstances, City playing incredibly well. They get a great comeback win on Saturday night against Minnesota, and Missouri being undefeated. They get a share of the St. Louis sports spotlight with this game taking place in St. Louis, and it's a great thing for both those teams, both City and Missouri. But Missouri is about building a program, and this is what you need to build a program. Wins and people having hope. And you get an undefeated team against LSU and Columbia, ideally, with LSU being a top 10 team, which is possible if they win in Oxford this weekend, and you get a good game time and a beautiful set of circumstances with the weather and the game time, and people go, man, this was super fun. We got to do this more often. When's the next time they play? Well, South Carolina in 2 weeks at homecoming. Sweet. What about after that? Well, then Tennessee comes to town, followed by Florida. And then it becomes something that people start paying attention to because the atmosphere becomes bigger than the game. Kind of like what happened for the Battlehawks. That's how you build a program. You got to win.
Yep.
And they've been winning, but then it becomes more about the atmosphere in addition to what they're doing on the football field. So what's going on is super exciting. I wouldn't say it's really all that surprising. I mean, if they were anything less than 3-1 through 4 games, you would have gone, oh, God, what's going on?
Correct, yeah.
But what is surprising, Brady Cook's performance.
Big time.
Negative surprising, the defense, but the secondary has 3 of their top 5 defensive backs injured. And Luther Burden is a Heisman candidate. Probably nobody would believe that nationally, but nobody's better yards after the catch right now. And if he can do that on a Saturday afternoon against LSU or a Saturday night against LSU, and then follows that up and does it against Kentucky and South Carolina, and who knows, then you get into a spot where you could have a huge game against Georgia and Athens, and he has that kind of game. All of a sudden people, and it sounds like a joke right now, and I get that, but it sounded like a joke in 2007 if you were talking like this. But all you want to have is hope, because that's what gets people talking, and that's what you've got right now, heading into late September in a game against Vanderbilt.
Yep. I think when I asked the question, have you seen progress, I wouldn't go, jump out the gym and say that Drink has progressed this team like crazy. But at the moment, he has put them in a position to get that progress going.
But the progress began last year. And that's the thing, I often say, I think the world of Gabe Darman. He's not with us. God bless him. He's at the Ryder Cup this week, so he won't be with us. He sees it through wins and losses, and I get that. And when it's all said and done, that's what matters. But if Missouri went 6-6 this year, but they only beat, Memphis and South Dakota and Vanderbilt and Middle Tennessee and a down take your pick of Arkansas or whomever, and then they got blown off the field by K-State and blown off the field by LSU and blown off the field by Georgia. You go, okay, they went 6-6, but God, they clearly took a step back. You can tell whether or not a team belongs. They may have been fortunate to beat K-State. I'm sure K-State feels like they could have won it. Missouri obviously did win it. I look at the Memphis game and I go, that's a fight that Missouri should have won by way more than they did, but they wound up winning it by 7. Yeah. So be it.
Right.
But that's the deal. If you're Eli Drinkwitz, you can go, hey, we're 4-0, but we're not 4-0 beating the hell out of people. So that allows your team to stay focused, and you can continue to point to things. Hey, third down is a problem for this team. Hey, boys, we're beat up in the secondary. We can't take anybody for granted, and they didn't with Memphis. I don't think they took them for granted. No. Just think they're in a spot that they're in with health. But, God, if you can keep Luther Burden healthy and get the third down situation right, it really could wind up being a special year. And as a football fan, that's all you want. As a college football fan, you want to believe in that which you thought was highly unlikely at the beginning of the year, and that is a special season like 2007 and 2013. Your thoughts are welcome. 314-399-9646. Air Comfort Service. Text line to McKernan Action Jackson with you. This is Balloon Party, driven by Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota on 101 ESPN.
Football season is here, and dive into the best pool in history. Stadium Swim, located at Circuit Resort and Casino. Catch all the biggest games at a viewing experience built for sports fans. Chill in one of the 6 pools on 3 different levels for a perfect view of our massive 40-foot tall high definition screen. Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. Swim-up bars, Insta-ready selfie walls, and one non-stop football party. Score your perfect game day spot with cozy day beds, private cabanas, or grab a lounge at the center of the action. Reserve your place today. It's 365 days of sports poolside, located at Circus Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas on Fremont Street. Stadium Swim, all sports, all season. Book your spot today at circalasvegas.com.
Welcome back. It's Balloon Party driven by Mungan, St. Louis Acura, Alton Toyota here on 101 ESPN and on YouTube, the 101 ESPN channel on YouTube. Come on in and, talk it over. They're talking it over in there. Somebody just said Circa is so sick.
It is. That's Stadium Swim is no joke.
We've both been there.
Yeah, it's really
Jackson
cool.
was just there with his shirt off, too. In pineapple swim trunks?
That's right. Yep. It's kind of,
Sounds welcoming.
just giving some people the visuals.
It's hot. You
It
should
is.
wear those pant in tomorrow. Now that we're back on YouTube.
Oh, no. Swim trunks outside of a pool area,
You don't like that move?
it's tough.
Is it tough?
It's tough. It's easy to wear non-swim trunks into a pool, but wearing swim trunks outside of a pool setting is kind of difficult.
Tough.
Yeah, tough.
Tough.
With the right out of the back of your throat.
I didn't want to steal your thunder, so I just, let's go right into this Lil Piddles Angry Beaver Weekend Wrap-Up, and then if there's something that we don't cover, I'll go, oh, now I can go ranting about that. What is question 2?
Question 2 is about the kickoff time for the LSU game. That's kind of something I was wondering about.
I am so into this, but I also recognize, I oftentimes say on this program, I love golf, but I recognize I love it more than the vast majority of people in the audience, so therefore I don't talk about it much on this particular program. I would say maybe 3% of the audience cares about the LSU kickoff time.
Well, maybe because they're just not, up on game yet, and that's kind of our duty is to inform and entertain.
So you say
the
chicken or egg?
Sure. So I'll pose the question.
All right, pose your query. I shall do my best to answer.
Not looking past Vandy and Nashville this upcoming weekend, but asking you about the kickoff time for Mizzou and LSU. Do you think they will use their 6-day flex policy to figure out the best time for these games on SEC schedule?
We will find out the answer at noon for the record.
Yeah. Which game time do you think will be best for the program? Not necessarily best for you personally, but best for the program.
God. Probably 2:30. But you see, you want the night game, so you got to separate because you're looking at me like you.
I know. I'm thinking back to the biggest wins in Missouri history over the past 20 years. For let's say
they were all night games.
They're all night games.
I understand,
and I think there's something to that.
But when did they win at 2:30? When did they play at 2:30, and when did they win at 2:30?
When they beat Georgia between the hedges, it was certainly a day game, but it might have been 11
I think it was an 11 o'clock game.
I think it was too. That's the only day game I can think of in the past that's been like a big victory. Obviously LSU, but that was
COVID. KU, Missouri 2007, Missouri, Oklahoma 2010, Missouri A&M
2013, yeah.
13, Missouri, Arkansas 14. The other one that Gabe references is the one that you just brought up, Missouri, Georgia in 13. But that was in Athens, and I'm pretty sure that was an 11 o'clock start. Those are good for the visiting team. That's my premise.
They are. They're very good for the visiting team.
And also, Athens' situation is different than Columbia's. Athens is what? High side hour from Atlanta?
Right.
You're talking about a couple of hours and an 11 o'clock start. And this isn't about... It's what puts you in the biggest light and gets people to come to the game. Mm-hmm. And sometimes things are out of your control. But the biggest games Missouri's had when the team's competitive recently over the last decade for a non-Arkansas Friday afternoon game after Thanksgiving have been 11 o'clock games. You can talk about Georgia, but by the time Georgia came there last year, they already had lost to Auburn and Kentucky.
Yeah.
And Kansas State, I think. Or no, they hadn't lost to Kansas State or Kentucky. They had lost to Kansas State and Auburn.
Right.
So the excitement level, you're already a 2-loss team at that time. It just don't be 11 o'clock and I'm happy.
Right. I think the best time for the program in terms of eyeballs on the game would be 2:30. I think in terms of the energy in the stadium, I think the 6 p.m. is a little more. I think there's going to be a great energy.
Let me pose this question to you, and I know you don't have the answer, so it's not fair, but maybe like a Buck Swope of Balloon Party is listening who can give us the answer. When is the last time Missouri, and honestly, I don't know when it would be. I can't even think of it, and I've got a very odd memory, as you know, when Missouri hosted a 2:30 p.m. game.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a good question.
So it's tough to compare it if it hasn't happened.
Plenty of 3 p.m.s, but 2:30, not so much. Yeah, I really can't think of one. Certainly nothing of note, like nothing that would have.
I don't know,
because that's the premier.
That is the premier. That is usually reserved for one of 3 programs in the SEC.
Right, Bama, Georgia, LSU.
Yeah, very rarely do they go, oh, big game in Lexington between the Gamecocks and Wildcats. Let's turn it over to Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson. And Gary Danielson probably would just go, I'm not coming to this one. That's kind of the attitude he would have.
For reference, that Georgia game in Athens that Missouri won was an 11 o'clock game.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Do we have a 2:30 Missouri hosting in the SEC ever?
That same year in 2013, they hosted Toledo at 2:30. But that was
My
on ESPNU.
guess is that wasn't a Vern Lundquist affair.
That was an ESPNU affair.
Right. I think I was on the call of that.
Yeah, I can't think of one in recent memory, but they've never been in the position, really, over the past 10 years.
Texted, the one I was actually thinking was Alabama in 2012. I was actually thinking that.
That was like the first year. That was the first year of the SEC,
I think it
right?
was. And I think the SEC had a buy-in for every other school outside of Missouri and Alabama because Eddie Lacy just.
Oh, that's
and then
right.
I remember there was like a video of the huddle, and they're screaming about, "Let's get out of this, mother effing, s-hole of a stadium."
Yeah, rough.
Like,
yeah, I remember
not an
that.
endorsement for O Field. Boys from Tuscaloosa are used to better facilities.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Well, try the Dome.
Listen, I'd be very open. I'd like, because you think logistically through a 2:30 game, people from St. Louis could travel at
all day long,
9 a.m.
Yes,
get
and then
here
you can
by
have
11.
a little pony for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Whereas if it's an 11 a.m. game, it's going to be tough to wrangle up.
Thank you to Jim Wheeler in the YouTube chat. Played Bama in 2012, first SEC. Oh, that wasn't the first SEC game. The one against Georgia was. Grown man football.
That was a tough schedule in the first year. They said, you want to come to the SEC, you got to take this rough schedule to start.
There you go.
But yeah, I think 11 a.m., like, it's tough to wrangle up the kids or, even if it's just like a couple or a single person.
2:30 or 6 or 7 p.m. That's what I'm looking for.
I would agree. And I hope that they use, because scheduling it right now, I think, is short-sighted because so much can change. In
particular this weekend. The other two games that would be in the mix are Texas A&M and Alabama, and Kentucky and Georgia. Excuse me. And they're both in the big boys' houses.
Yeah.
Georgia's hosting. They're a 24.5-point favorite right now if you look ahead to the line. So it's not really that attractive, but it's Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia's got to go to Auburn this weekend. Kentucky hosts Florida.
Yeah.
I'd say Georgia wins at Auburn 90% of the time.
I might even go higher. Yeah.
I think I'm just not.
You short on Georgia or
I'm
higher
not short
on
on Georgia. I just think it's like what Brian Kelly said, which if Missouri's undefeated and they're one loss and that becomes a huge game, it'll get brought up. He did a preseason interview. Goes, look at Georgia. You got to go into a place like Columbia, Missouri, and play an SE game, as in crappy game,
right,
and still win. And even though I totally get what he was saying,
agreed,
you can turn that into kind of like how Ryan Day turned his attention to Lou Holtz immediately after Ohio State beat Notre Dame and. What's the guy at Washington State? Turned his attention on Lou Holtz. Yeah, Jake Dicker turned his attention on Lee Corso. Both these men have been in bed for 6 hours, and they wake up and they go, "The hell, we're motivating football teams."
Yeah, that's
what's going on.
Weekend wrap up. I got a question.
Oh, it's in there.
I got a question about what's going on there. But
so
yeah,
Kentucky
right.
and Georgia and A&M and Alabama are the competition for Missouri and LSU. Night game or 2:30.
Yeah, that's
just don't 11 o'clock me. If you said, Tim, you got to bet. What for you is something you wouldn't bother to pick up, but you dropped a $100 bill. Not worth your time.
No, wouldn't even turn around.
But let's say it were your standard unit size of $100,000.
Right.
So I got to bet that. I would say, and I have 4 choices. My choices are the 3-time slots and also the 6-day window. I'm betting 6-day window.
Would agree. I would also put my money there. If it's
announced at 11 o'clock at noon, I will be in a dark place in 90 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I really will be.
Me too, because I'm going. Because I'm going to the game, and that changes out. I'll have to drive down Friday night. We have the TMA Hit and Giggle on Friday, October 6th.
That's right.
And so that's going to be a long day if I have to go drive to Columbia afterwards. I don't want to do that. I want to drive up on Saturday morning.
And now, how about this? I didn't expect this. I took my 6-year-old to the game.
Yep.
And I loved being there with my son, his first college football game. So that truly was awesome. It was louder than I ever expected.
Oh, yeah.
It had 45,000 people. Their colonel was talking about 27,000 people.
Yep.
And I'm not saying he was making it up. I'm sure that's what he was told. But then it wound up being. They got a lot of sales after the K-State win. And he had an early morning skate at Centene the following morning, both on Saturday and Sunday. And so I'm like, I can't have him out until 11 and then get home, and it's just be irresponsible. So we left at halftime, and he said, "Dad, next time they play at the Dome, can we stay for the whole game?" And I said, "Son, come here." The next time they play at the Dome, Either the dome will be 6 feet under or I'll be 6 feet under.
One of us is going to have to go.
So you take your boy.
Yeah, right. You take your son.
And you remember him the first half of the Memphis game.
Yep.
Because I don't think it's going to be a return engagement. I did think it was interesting, and I didn't see this article until yesterday. It was in the Post-Dispatch that they initially talked with Busch Stadium about putting that game there.
Yeah, it would have made sense given the time of year because it'd still be warm. And
that turf that they played on Saturday night, I truly believe it was the same turf that Jameis Winston was playing on in 2015 for the final St. Louis Rams home game.
Yeah, I can't
and I don't know why it wouldn't be.
Right.
Like some people are going, why wouldn't they put new turf? Well, for what reason?
Right. Well,
I mean, we all love
money?
the Battlehawks. Okay? Yeah. I understand it. But also, if we can just be honest with it, if we can. And unfortunately, this program's called Honesty in Media, which then leads me to be the enemy of the people, even though I'm a kid from a hardworking family in South St. Louis that loves communities, family, and education. That the XFL isn't the NFL. All due respect. I say that with all due respect.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, I don't know how much sense it would make for the flush with cash city of St. Louis to say, hey, why don't we spend some money on new turf for the Battlehawks games and the first time in 13 years that Missouri hosts Memphis as far as an allocation of funds. Now, you might say, well, the city of St. Louis and their allocation of funds has a lot that they can answer questions for. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly. However, if the line item came across X number of millions of dollars for refurbishing the dome's turf, I don't know how that would play.
Don't think it would play well, Tim.
So it was fun to see two different yardage markers. I'm like, oh, there's the 30. And then right below it, there's the 30 as well. There was like a Tupac hologram from Coachella of the 30. And then like 5 yards below it, there was another 30.
It's called 3D, Tim.
3D is what it was.
Go with the times.
But still, the atmosphere, a bunch of Missouri fans there tailgating.
Oh, yeah, I was at the
atmosphere, it was loud in that building.
Oh, yeah, when the onside kick was recovered, obviously taken back, but I thought the place was going bananas when they recovered that onside kick. That people were fired up. Loved it, too.
All right, we have more from the Lil Piddles Weekend Wrap-Up. It's brought to you by Angry Beaver. Your thoughts are always welcome. 314-399-9646, Air Comfort Service text line. This is Balloon Party driven by Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. Munganess, St. Louis Acura, Alton Toyota, the presenting sponsor of Balloon Party on 101 ESPN, and also the place where I go to get my cars, my family's cars, and where I would love for you to do the exact same thing, because once you do, you will experience the service that we experience and why we are so happy shopping at Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. Online at stlouisacura.com and altontoyota.com. It is Munganess, and if you have any specific questions you would want to ask of the people in charge at Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota, all you got to do is use the secret number. The secret number, 314-252-0029, and boom. Now you're communicating with Jamie Burkhardt, Clayton Patterson, and Peter Munganast at Munganast, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. It's a beautiful week of weather, so go out and check out the lot. But if you don't have the time to do it and you still want to support our sponsors, that totally makes sense. Just go online and go to stlouisacura.com or altontoyota.com and see the selection they have for you. It's Munganast, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota.
This is Action Jackson with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals fall to the hands of the San Diego Padres yesterday. Final score of 12-2 in favor of the Padres. Off day today, but they'll take on the Milwaukee Brewers tomorrow night. First pitch, 6:40 p.m. That was another Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to McKernan Action Jackson with you. This is 101 ESPN, and we're on YouTube, the 101 ESPN channel on YouTube. And you're welcome to participate in the program by texting in Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. Miss anything? Go back and podcast Dobbs Tire and Auto Center's podcast here on Balloon Party. Jackson, you are handling this Lil Piddles Angry Beaver Weekend Wrap-Up flawlessly. From my standpoint, it's flawless. What is your third question?
Sure. What's the deal with coaches looking for bulletin board material and making things personal? It's bordering on WWE.
Do we have some of the sound?
Oh, we got plenty of it.
Wow. Okay, so what are we going with? Are we going with Lou Holtz first?
Let's start off with Lou Holtz comments.
This is Lou Holtz appearing on Pat McAfee's show. Lou Holtz, for the record, 86 years old and Notre Dame legend, and he was appearing on a radio program. Here's what he had to say.
Notre Dame is a better football team than Ohio State.
Love hearing that. Please, Coach.
And let me tell you why. We have the best offensive line in the country. Sam Hartman won't even get his jersey dirty all year. He has time to throw the football. The offensive line, we have great running back. Esteem is averaging about 10 yards a carry. We have great receivers. So offensively, we're set. Defensively, our defensive line's better. And you look at Coach Day, and I coached at Ohio State under Woody Hayes. We won the national championship when I was there.
That's right.
So I'm proud of that. However, he has lost to Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Michigan twice, and everybody that beats him does so because they're more physical than Ohio State. And I think Notre Dame will take that same approach. Just tell Ohio State this. You take this message to Ohio State. You tell them they better bring their lunch because it's going to be a full damn day's work.
I love that.
So that's kind of the equivalent of like Norm Stewart or Gary Pinkel doing an interview on a show, and you go, okay, well, what else? What else is he going to say?
Isaac Bruce saying he thinks Memphis is going to win.
Right, I didn't go, hold on a second. Where's Isaac Bruce? You know, so Ohio State wins in stunning fashion at the end. I say stunning, not just because they scored a touchdown to win 17-14 with 1 second left on the clock in the fourth quarter, but because Marcus Freeman, the head coach of Notre Dame, had 10 players out there on defense for the final 2 plays. Yeah. And Ohio State just ran where a defensive lineman wasn't, and they scored a touchdown. I mean, can you imagine if that were Missouri and that were Eli Drinkwitz?
Oh, my God.
My God, poor Colonel. Colonel would go to Rome, but there wouldn't be a Ryder Cup. He'd just be hiding out like Michael Corleone.
Bingo.
So here is what Ryan Day had to say when Catherine Tappan caught him on the field on NBC right after the win for the Buckeyes.
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. What he said about our team, I cannot believe. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world, and it'll continue to be Ohio against the world. But I'll tell you what, I love those kids, and we got a tough team.
That's honestly the vocal pattern I hear when I read a tweet in my mentions from a dog avatar. Except that's the head coach of Ohio State. Going, wow, Lou Holtz, who was just like playing to the crowd. It's like Mankind, Mick Foley in WWE. He'd go cheap pop, it's great to be here in St. Louis, Missouri. Rawr.
Right, toasted ravioli.
The best fans in baseball. It's this cheap pop thing. And Ryan Day is like, the first thing on his mind is 86-year-old Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz had to be like, geez, I didn't know.
I imagine Ryan Day with a dartboard with Lou Holtz's face on it at halftime.
I'm like, man, if you want to focus on something to be upset about, what about that 4th and 1 jet sweep you called that didn't work out? But digressing, and all of the hatred that Lou Holtz is bringing, he hasn't coached there in 30 years. Jake Dickert, that's the Washington State head coach. Now, don't play all 90 seconds of this thing. Don't worry about it. Okay. He goes off on Lee Corso after Washington State beats Oregon State. And I'm going, Lee Corso's right there with Lou Holtz.
Right.
That was the first thing on his mind. Now, I have to say, Jake Dickert laid it out sounding like, he was more balanced than Ryan Day. And his issue was, he was saying it was the Who Cares Bowl or something like that. But I think, if we're being honest, Oregon State and Washington State, even though it was a showdown of 2 top 25 teams, it wasn't necessarily a game that the country had circled. It was probably like 8th, 9th, 10th on the list.
Yeah.
Hey, I would love to see Washington State force the hand of college football and a team that doesn't have a conference next year be in the college football
how
playoff.
great would that be?
I would love it.
That'd be awesome.
I would absolutely love it. But where is your question going? The bulletin board material thing?
Yeah, why do you think now more so than ever? Because we saw it last year with Kirby Smart. So
Kirby Smart last year, for those who aren't familiar with, when they won the national championship and beat the living hell out of TCU, he was talking about all these people had been doubting us all year. And I'm going, you've been number one from start to finish. Who's doubting you?
Right.
Did one guy on Twitter say something? Who are these people? So your premise being creating...
Yeah, and do you think there's like a slippery slope with that, where you're listening to everything and you mentioning Lou Holtz in your post-game interview?
So I brought this up on TMA this morning, and I said, I don't know who started it. And a Georgia fan, guy who texts into our show, Alan Dadeville, which is a play on the great Harvey Updike and his fun with the tree at Auburn, if you recall that. That's what he called the Nepal Feinbaum show as Alan Dadeville for
really?
the history. I didn't know.
Nice.
Nice. So he said he thinks Nick Saban started it and Kirby Smart was on Nick Saban's staff. And so you just do this thing where you try to make it personal. And... I think if I were to try to psychoanalyze the reason for having to find an enemy.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders is doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Deion Sanders is doing it. Obviously, Dan Lanning did it this weekend. Dan Lanning's the head coach at Oregon. And he said they're worried about clicks. We're worried about what? Wins.
Yeah.
You play 12 games and one bad quarter can destroy all of the work for 364 days of the year.
Yeah.
So you have to try to find a way to keep 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-olds, and sometimes guys randomly in their 30s who come back, to keep their focus. And the way to do that, especially now, is to create an enemy and make it personal. It's a motivational tactic.
Oh, yeah.
We on the outside look at it and go, like when Eli Drinkwitz was going, and all the people who booed Brady Cook, and I'm talking to people who went to the game and go, I don't know, I didn't really hear it, but I guess, he's not making it up. I'm not saying he was making it up. All I know is it wasn't loud enough for people to be aware of it until he really brought it up in the post game. It is a motivational tactic, and whatever you got to do, you got to do. The one that, to me, was the most asinine isn't Ryan Day and Lou Holtz. It was certainly, as far as the delivery goes, uncomfortable. He was really mad at Lou Holtz. Was Kirby Smart saying, everybody doubted us. And I'm going, but you've been number one all year. Who is doubting you? But I'm looking at it now that you see Dickert and Lee Corso and Day and Lou Holtz and Eli Drinkwitz and all the people booing Brady Cook before the K-State game. I'm going, it's a strategy.
Right.
You got to try to keep kids focused. One of the toughest things is not allowing to have the slip up on the games where you're going, oh my God, this could end our season if we were to have the Michigan Appalachian State situation.
Yeah.
All your hopes go out the window in a game. So you got to try to fire them up and make sure that they're locked in. And I'm sure Kirby Smart's like, oh my God, we almost lost in Columbia, Missouri to a, pedestrian Missouri team.
Certainly.
We got to find a way to keep these guys motivated.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to keep them motivated when you're playing K-State in front of a sold-out crowd. It's tougher to keep them motivated when you're going to Nashville and playing a Vanderbilt team that, was down 21-0 in the first half against Kentucky this weekend. So that, I think, is the reason for it. Is it honest? I don't know if I necessarily, but I also don't know if it's necessary. Like, was Lou Holtz's reputation damaged by it? I'm sure Lou Holtz is probably amused by it. You know? I mean, it's honest. It's like watching WWE and guys cutting promos.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And like, I'm sure Lou Holtz has, you're exactly right. But I do know for certain players that I often reference Chris Long's podcast, but he talks about in college, whatever it took. It could be a local beat writer for the other school saying some
motivation
message board, some like tape that on the locker, and that gets him going. Like that just works for some players.
The thing that's different, because I think it's been going on for a long time. The thing that's different now is guys are talking about it afterwards.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
Like Ryan Day to cite Lou Holtz right away.
Yeah, immediately.
I mean, holy crap, you know. I think the reason why the Lou Holtz thing got him going is it wasn't about taking shots at his kids, because he wasn't. He specifically said Ryan Day has lost, and then he listed, and he said it's because of toughness.
Yeah.
So he really called out Ryan Day.
Yeah, it's a little different.
But then he used it to defend his program, when in reality I think he didn't like the shot at himself. That's what I think that was. All right, we'll take a break, come back with the final segment of Balloon Party on 101 ESPN. Welcome back. Balloon Party 101 ESPN, presented by Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. Tim McKernan, Action Jackson with you for 5 more minutes. Jackson, maximize those 5 minutes. You do with them what you want.
I really like this next question.
Lil Piddles Angry Beaver Weekend Wrap-Up.
Yeah, I really am a fan of this one. So we've talked about the formula for gambling. You fade the public, follow the money, that kind of thing. What are some of the reasons the public may be all over one game while sharp bettors are on the other side?
Oh, that's easy for me. And I feel like if this were Steve Harvey's Family Feud, this would be the answer that the sharp players would give the answer to. See if you think, what are you thinking? What do you think the answer is?
Probably overvaluing or overreacting to one certain game or player being out. For reference, the Colts were without Anthony Richardson, and so the number was a little bit bigger. And I think people were like, oh, Ravens at home, easy money. Obviously, the other side hit.
I would say the answer is recency bias.
Okay, that's certainly another.
I think that is the biggest thing. For example, 10 days ago, Missouri going into Kansas State. Oh, my God, they've got no choice. Now it's, man, Missouri might be able to be 8-0 going into Athens. Right. It's just, it swings. And you just have to think, okay, what have you actually seen? I totally agree on the injury thing, but I think oftentimes quarterbacks, and they should, they have the biggest impact of any of the 22 starters.
Yeah.
But they're not the only player. I'm going to continue to hammer this. Missouri has lost a bunch of players. They're not household names. They're not Brady Cook. They're not Luther Burden. But that's a real thing. And you factor in weather sometimes. All I know is Jackson and I talk about it. And so Jackson knows what my picks are before I even make them.
Yeah, well, because I'm usually on the same games.
Because you're doing the same thing. So I was on the Colts yesterday as well. I don't know who's playing. I mean, I knew Richardson wasn't because he's on my fantasy team. But
the Ravens are missing 7 defensive starters.
I didn't know. All I did was, the public is betting the Ravens and the money is on the Colts. That's easy. I shall bet the Colts. That's what I do.
Right.
Oh, the public is on the Jaguars. The money is on the Texans. Very easy. I shall bet the Texans. However, what was the public on? The Miami Dolphins.
Yep.
And I was talking over with Matt Rocky. I said, I had money on the Broncos yesterday. And he goes, oh, my God, that was the easiest bet ever. But guess what? 67% of the easiest bets ever didn't cover.
Yep.
The Broncos was the one that was the easiest bet. So you hit 67%, you're profitable. I don't know how to explain it outside of I'm talking about for really a quarter of a century of a sample size on this. It's not absolute. There's no absolute. There are so many other factors, unless you really believe it's rigged. Mm-hmm. And if it's rigged, a lot of people are doing a great job keeping their mouths shut.
Yeah.
All I know is this is the way that it works. I think there's so much parity in the NFL. Occasionally, you'll have these one-off kind of teams. The Chiefs recently and again yesterday are a one-off as far as greatness goes. The Rams back in the day were a one-off as far as greatness goes. The Bears may be a one-off as far as being garbage goes. This year, you may have a one-off with the Dolphins. Yeah. And by one-off, I mean it doesn't apply to them as far as the parity goes. The Dolphins and the Chiefs, I don't know if anybody else at this moment stands out to you that would be in that category.
Not to that level.
I mean, the Chiefs are 2-1, but they also didn't have Travis Kelce for the first loss.
Right, the game they should have won anyways.
That they're over here, and as far as bad teams go, they're way over here. The Bears truly might be that. I mean, the Bears and the Broncos, and they happen to play each other this week. I mean, you want to talk about the Nobody Cares Bowl
in Chicago?
Wow. I mean, when that gets going, so. That's my but I think it's human nature. You recognize, having done a show for 20 years, you recognize sometimes you're saying something and then people go, how can you say that? They just did this. Or, well, we're all the so-and-so haters now. And I'm going, well, that's fine, but let's look at the body of work because that's how you have to make judgment calls. If you want to make a judgment call based on a small sample size, you're probably going to lose more often than you win. If you want to do social media likes, well, then you can get your win there. But, Jackson, I'm in the cash money business. Me and Nino Brown, Wesley Snipe, and that was 1991's New Jack City. Am I correct on that? And that was good.
For sure, yeah. Oh, my God.
Oh, wow. I thought you might.
No, I love New Jack City.
Okay, good. So have people over and watch it.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Do you have another question? Oh, it's 10:59.
Yeah.
Let's do another hour.
All right.
BK and Ferrari are up next. We got to go. That's just it. We got to go. In an hour from now, we find out the LSU game time. I don't think we will. I think 6-day window. That's where my money is. What do you want to bet? Make a bet.
No, that's not.
You're on the 6-day window too thing?
Yeah, I think it would be, if you have that power, why not use it?
I would agree. You get to do it 2 times a year, I believe, and they'll exercise it once right here, and that would be the smart thing to do. So, unfortunately, I think we'll have to wait a week or 6 days to find out. All right, time to go. BK and Ferrari are up next. For Action Jackson, I'm Tim McKernan. This has been Balloon Party, driven by Munganess, St. Louis Accurate, and Alton Toyota, 101 ESPN.